voice. I said, yeah. Him and my baby girl, they can hear
The
me.
Intergovernmental Affairs Committee meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Tyus,
Present.
Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Gunther, Alderwoman Boyd,
Here.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Present.
Alderman Narayan,
Present.
Chairman Moore. 4 present, you have quorum.
Okay, a quorum being present, the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee meeting is called to order, and we have minutes. Let's see. Oh, thank you. We have minutes. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that we need to go over for a minute, and then if the minutes are correct, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes, but take a few minutes to look at it.
I would move to approve the minutes.
I do want to make a correction. So I had asked that we bring some of the people that were not represented before this committee, okay? The people in the board bill. I did ask, where's the position of the sheriff, the circuit attorney, the public defenders, and the, who else did I ask for? It was somebody else. Several people had asked, because I didn't think it was right to just present a bill that spoke to what they thought without speaking, with them coming to speak. And I'd asked that they be brought before, but the bill got fast-tracked so fast that didn't happen. But the sheriff's office is here today, and the public defender's office was here and had to leave because we didn't get started. But I just want to make the note that I did ask for those people to be here, and I did speak to them myself, so I can't tell you what they said. Okay, Mr. Alderman Boyd, we're back to Board Bill number 32, committee substitute.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We talked quite a bit about this last week, and one of the part of the conversation, there needed to be an amendment as far as appointing, recommending the 2 positions by the executive director to serve on the council. So I want to just pass out this amendment. And what we're doing in this amendment, basically, if you go to page 3 of the board bill, starting at line 9, we're going to take that whole section B out and replace it with a new section B, just to be clean with it. This had come up with Alderman Narayan's observations, and so we took that in consideration, and it was pretty much an oversight, but we're making sure that we put that language in the bill so that it's clear.
Did you have an amendment last time also? Okay, I couldn't remember. So this is amendment number 1. Has the committee had time to read over his amendment? Okay. Just for discussion purposes and for voting purposes, but we're not voting on the bill right now, I'd entertain a motion to amend 32 committee substitute with amendment number 1, which would be on page 3, line 9.
Now say that again.
I'd entertain a motion that we amend committee substitute, 32 committee substitute with amendment number 1, and the pages are page 3, line 9. He's going to remove that whole part out, part B, and put in a new part. Okay.
Second.
I need a motion.
Oh, that's what I was waiting on.
Move to amend Board Bill 32 committee substitute with amendment number 1.
Move to amend Board Bill Committee Substitute.
32.
32 to amendment number 1.
Adopt. I'm sorry, it's not adopted.
Okay.
I said the wrong thing.
All right.
Point of order.
Yes.
I believe that this amendment would actually start at line 7, not line 9.
Okay.
Because that's where the B starts.
Okay.
We have two different.
I'm looking at 32 committee substitute.
And it starts appointed
So
judge.
when I'm looking at says 9.
It's two.
So he gave us a different.
Two. Yeah, the tender packet.
So I'm looking at 3, line 7 here. Oh, that's an old one, okay.
So which one is the old one?
The one that says line 9 is the correct one, because he did pass out 2.
But both of mine are old.
I got the right one in front of me.
I was like, I'm confused
Yeah, you have
now.
2, right.
Okay, yeah, all right, thanks.
Yeah, see, I'm on both of these.
We should get rid of old bills when that happens, so we don't.
Both of these on line 9, where that starts.
B.
That's what this one is at.
Should be 9, not 7. If you got one that's 7,
Right,
it's wrong.
I'll put that to the
Okay.
side.
Because we came in with the original bill, then he brought a committee substitute, then we got another committee substitute. I beg your pardon.
Okay, so
Yes.
this one,
Line 7 is wrong. Anything that has line 7 starting with B on page 3 of 8 is wrong.
But 9 is correct.
Line 9 is correct.
Okay.
That's where B starts.
thank you for the clarification.
Are we all on the same page? No, that's the time to do it. Okay, we moved to amend 32 committee substitute, and we had a second. Madam,
I'm sorry, who seconded?
did anybody? I thought you seconded. You didn't second? Okay, no second, because you did point of order. We still need a second.
Second.
Okay, we're waking up this morning,
Right,
okay? Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Okay, have some water, Sharon.
Alderwoman Tyus,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Gunther, Alderwoman Boyd.
Here,
Aye.
aye.
Okay, you drank what I drank.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye. Ooh.
Alderman Orion,
No.
Okay.
Chairman Moore. 3 aye votes and 1 no vote.
Okay. By your vote, we've put amendment number 1 on 32 committee substitute. At this point, we want to have some discussion more about the bill. I did call many of the people who were not here and asked them to come. I'll tell you what they said, but the sheriff sent a person here to testify. So I would like for the sheriff person, Greg Christensen, to come before, because the sheriff was here and had to leave because this is the funeral, I think, of the policeman that was, right. So if Greg Christensen would come before the committee and say your name and who you
I
work
am
for.
Deputy Sheriff Greg Christian. I am the Public Information Officer for the department, kind of liaison to other governmental agencies. The sheriff was here earlier, but did have to leave due to the funeral going on this morning for a former St. Louis police officer. The sheriff's official position on criminal justice coordinating council or board is and he's not necessarily opposed to having advisory council in theory, but one of the issues for our department right now in practice is that the city does not have enough money to even fund the most basic of training for sheriff's deputies, of which the sheriff has requested. This is a department that generates almost more money for the city than it brings in, than it costs currently. And the sheriff feels that if the city can't afford to adequately train deputies, then this would be a luxury that the city also cannot afford. So it's akin to buying a luxury vehicle and not having enough money to purchase gasoline to put into it. So.
Okay, and this is directly related to the fact that we're going to have a paid position that's in this board bill, right?
Multiple.
Right, exactly. So, and we didn't get to ask the question about how much it was going to cost for this position, but we know that it's going to be upward of more than $100,000, $200,000 by the time you add staff and things, right?
Most likely. I don't know if there's a fiscal note for this bill yet.
It isn't.
Okay.
So that's another thing that's missing. I don't know how I got introduced without the fiscal note, actually. That's one of the questions I have here. And the sheriff did tell you that I spoke with him and called him. Did he tell you that?
I do. I'm aware of that, and I'm sure he's going to be reaching. If he hasn't talked to you already, he'll be reaching out to members of this committee. The one request that we do have is, obviously, since there are changes being made to this bill today that we have not had time to review, we would request that there is no vote to pass this bill yet. So until we have time to review any kind of changes to the committee substitute.
My conversation with the sheriff was that, because I was questioning why we needed to have a group for elected officials to meet. Okay, that was our conversation. And you can't speak exactly for what we said, but I will say it, and hopefully we'll have another meeting. We can talk about that. The sheriff told me that he would be glad to meet with anybody, and that he did not think that there needed to be a forced group for that to happen. So I don't know if you had any kind of conversation about anything other than the money part of it.
Well, it's not necessarily about the money. I mean, obviously, if everyone just kind of did their job, we wouldn't need an advisory board, but criminal justice is complicated, and we do know that some of these boards have been helpful in other cities. So again, the sheriff isn't necessarily opposed to this in practice or in theory. It's just more so a question of priorities that the city has when it comes to its funding. And I don't want to speak to the conversation that you had with the sheriff. The sheriff, I do know, is willing to meet with anybody, anytime, anywhere. He will, if you are a citizen off the street and want to meet with the sheriff, he will gladly accept your meeting, and that he will sit down with anybody to work with anybody on anything. That's his policy. So again, that is why he's not opposed to this in theory. So.
And I have a question, because I didn't get to ask of this. What kind of information would be shared? Because they talk about information sharing. What kind of information do you know that would be shared?
Well, right now, I do know that there is a complicated mixture of agencies between the 21st Judicial Circuit, the St. Louis Police Department, the Department of Corrections, and the Sheriff's Office, and the Clerk's Office, that all have to work in conjunction to make sure our criminal justice system works correctly, of which case we obviously have a federal lawsuit that has mandated certain things were not happening in the correct manner. So perhaps a committee like this could have advised the city, these agencies to work better together, but it's also a matter of maybe just people picking up the phone and meeting with each other too. So, obviously this is a large city, complicated system. This is the largest circuit in the state of Missouri. We actually have more criminal cases in the 21st Circuit than St. Louis County and Jackson County, where Kansas City is located, combined. This is the largest sheriff's office in the state of Missouri, and we don't even police any areas. So we transport about 28,000 people per year, which is larger than a lot of cities in the state of Missouri. So there's a lot of complex interactions going on every day at the courthouse. So it's hard to say whether we need this or not. Common sense would say, well, if people just did their jobs correctly, we wouldn't need it. But these are complex agencies that do need to interact and can possibly share information better than they are. So there is possible utility to something of this nature.
Okay, I want you to stay in, if other people don't have questions, and I have a few more.
Sure.
But we're going to start with Alderman Muhammad just walked in. Do you have any questions?
I have no questions, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay. Alderwoman Boyd, do you have any questions?
I do. I guess I'm kind of confused because on here it says appointed. And so I keep hearing salaries. And so I'm confused. So how is it appointed positions or paid position? And then at the end of this bill, like it was brought up earlier, it's nothing that shows where these salaries, how they would be incorporated. So
Well,
it's not
my
making
understanding
sense to me.
is that this bill would authorize the city to create an entity of which then can contract, hire, be sued. I think that language is in there. So this bill basically gives the authority for the city to enter into one of these agreements.
And I will direct you, Alderwoman Boyd, to page 1 of 8, lines 8, 9, 10. It allows for when they say executive director and staff shall be members of the city's classified service plan, that's a paid position, okay? So that's what that is.
Even though it's appointed?
Oh, yes, the mayor appoints lots of people that
Well,
get paid. All of the wait.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now I got it, okay. Because I kept saying appointed.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
right, okay.
Exactly, and it should be a fiscal note. I noticed that when I got home the other day.
Okay.
This is a violation of how we're supposed to introduce our board bill, so,
All
okay.
right.
Just to speak more to that question, just to
Wait a
clarify.
minute, let
Okay,
her-
sure.
that's it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, technically, we're looking at, and this is probably for Alderman Jeffrey Boyd, we're looking to create a whole department. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm sorry. Alderman Boyd. So we're looking to create a whole department with this bill.
Basically, not it's kind of, it's going to be kind of like, when you think of a department, the Civilian Review Office. It's
Okay.
going to be 2 staff people.
So you saying this bill will create 2 staff people?
It creates the entity
Okay.
that would allow them to hire 2 people.
So will they work in conjunction with any other agencies or?
Basically, the staff people would support the council, be kind of like that facilitator of information,
Okay,
setting meetings, getting minutes done, all that stuff.
okay, all right, thank you, that's all I have.
And he had a further answer to your question,
Okay,
if you
go
don't mind.
ahead, I'm sorry.
I think the Alderman answered that correctly. Yeah, this is the appointment is the advisory board, and then, again, the entity creates the positions. That's the Alderman, I think, answered your question.
Okay,
Anything else, Alderwoman?
no, ma'am, thank you.
Alderwoman Middlebrook?
I have no questions.
Alderman Narayan?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. I just have a question, and it's only tangentially related, so
Sure.
if you don't have the answer, that's 100% fine with me.
Well, if I don't have it, I can look it up for you and make sure you guys get that information. So any information you might request from us, I can provide.
Great. So you said something that was a bit concerning to me in your previous testimony. You said that the sheriff was worried about funding for even basic training for his deputies.
That's correct.
So what sort of basic training do you not have the funding for, and what kind of funding would you need to get that basic training?
So, I mean, obviously, this is not related to this bill, but this year in the budget, the sheriff requested $150,000. He's organized a program to move our department and start training deputies to become post-certified, which is the basic law enforcement standard for any office. Every single deputy in the state of Missouri, every deputy in a courtroom, every deputy that does what we do is post-certified, except the deputies of the city of St. Louis, Missouri.
Is there a reason historically for that, or is it just?
I believe the previous sheriff got the position and was not post-certified, and that is a requisite of every other sheriff in the state as well, and was able to get that law changed back in the day, and that kind of trickled down over the years. That's my understanding.
Gotcha.
I could be incorrect in that, but that's pretty much my understanding.
Sure.
So the sheriff, his goal, and he is going through post-certification training himself. He leads by example. And we've set up a program with the Missouri Sheriff's Association to come in and begin training our deputies in stages, because we have to do our duty during the day, and these would be night courses and some on the weekends. But we have deputies that are more than willing to take this training and to do it for a relatively inexpensive price. We were quoted about $12,000 per head from the St. Louis Police Academy, and we've put together a program where we can do it for about $4,000 or $5,000 a head. So we've got everything ready to go. The only holdup to even pursue this is the funding. Requested $150,000 this year in the budget. We went through every process, E&A, Ways and Means, the bill on the floor, and we're unable to do that. The budget director, the mayor's office, and the Board of E&A collectively wanted to put money elsewhere. They gave us $10,000. That does not cover the amount of money we need to purchase bullets for firearms recertification, which is a mandatory thing, or taser training. It's about $62 per deputy. So that's the amount the city of St. Louis right now is currently spending on training its deputy sheriffs, who are law enforcement officials who carry firearms.
So we didn't allocate enough money for the deputies to do firearms training?
Correct. So that's one of the issues that the sheriff has at this moment.
Understandable. Thank you for your candor.
But again, that's the way I know the sheriff approaches this. He's not opposed to participating in agencies, coordinating in a more efficient manner. He's not opposed to having an advisory board that looks at best practices from other cities that might help the city of St. Louis. I think that's something we probably don't do enough of in this town. But at the same time, we got to do the basics first.
Absolutely. Thank you. I have nothing further.
I do. And I know this, everything about a budget is connected. The city is connected. We act like we're not, and that's why we're sitting here now saying we want an agreement, which I don't think that elected officials should be put under appointed judges. So I have a whole nother problem about it. So many judges on here, and the alderman from the 24th and I hadn't spoken. We actually had the same questions about that, okay? But I think also you're having a problem with getting paid for transportation of your prisoners right now. Is that another?
That's kind of a whole nother issue.
Right.
The city has entered into a contract with the United States Marshal Service to house and transport federal prisoners. Right now, I believe that number, we've always had an agreement to do that, but that number, for whatever reason, the change in the U.S. Marshal Service, they used to kind of house people everywhere, kind of give sheriffs and cities all around the area a little bit of money for housing their prisoners. It's just become too convenient for them, I think, to just house everybody here because the federal court's right here. We have seen a 671% increase in the transportation of prisoners just in 2018 alone. We went from 2017 to transporting 297 prisoners, almost 300, to 1,994 in 2018. So that's a 671% increase. This year, we're on track to transport over 3,000.
So what would happen if our sheriff's office stopped picking these prisoners up?
Well, the United States Marshal Service would probably have to move all those prisoners to other areas that would transport them to the federal courts. So.
And then we would lose that income that we have for housing federal prisoners.
Correct. We estimate that it's about $8 million a year at this point for the year 20, not the fiscal year, but for this year, 2019.
So the city's being penny wise and dollar foolish.
Right. There's about 220 to 250 prisoners, federal prisoners in our custody at this time, and we transport those prisoners every day.
And when I got here, I was the first person to come over here, and I missed, Mary Fox was here from the Public Defender's Office, is that correct?
She wasn't. She did ask me to note that she did want to attend the meeting, but she had.
Did she tell you what her position was about the paid position? If you don't want to say it, I'll say it.
I don't want to speak for Mary Fox of the Public Defender's Office. That's not my
Okay,
purview.
I appreciate that. Okay. Does anybody have anyone else have any questions for Greg?
I do.
Alderwoman.
I don't have questions, I have a comment. For the last year prior to budget, I have been trying to work with the sheriff's office because you all are doing a lot of extra services from other departments that you aren't charging for. Start picking up stuff, doing things that you legally weren't doing before, and so now you're doing it.
Possibly. I mean, like, I'd have to know exactly what services you mean. Sometimes in the past, so federal prisoners, one of our big issues for the federal prisoners is in the past, I think the U.S. Marshals had a contract with Barnes Hospital Security Unit. And so when they had a prisoner, one of the federal prisoners that was ill or needed medical treatment off-site at the hospital, Barnes Security used to watch those prisoners. I think something changed under federal rules where they can no longer do that. So now it falls on the sheriff's office. So our hospital unit, we just don't have the manpower to watch all of our state mandated prisoners and the federal prisoners.
And that's why I brought it up, because you all are doing extra things that you don't have the manpower to do, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so that's what I was trying to work with your team about, and so they never followed back up.
Okay.
So that's what.
I don't know who you spoke to, but I'd be happy to get any information that you need. So,
Yeah, because when the sheriff came before the Ways and Means, I don't remember any of those conversations, so
Okay.
that's why I was asking.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else?
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I did have a conversation with both the public defender, Mr. Boyd, and I had a conversation with the circuit attorney. And Mary did come over here, and what she told me was she wanted to be here, but she had to leave, so we didn't start on time, is that she was not opposed to meeting. She didn't think that we needed to have a paid agreement or paid staff. And also, that was the same position for the circuit attorney, who was also had other concerns, but this was such a short meeting, she couldn't be here. I had told Alderman Boyd I was going to write up some things that I had concerns about, but we turned around and had the meeting very fast, so I was not able to do that because Friday we went for a time, and then I had things I had to do for the rest of the weekend. But one of our rules, Alderman, is that we are supposed to have a fiscal note attached to a board bill to be introduced. We don't have a fiscal note. Where's your fiscal note?
It's not required for this board bill.
Why is it not?
This board bill is not authorizing, there will be a separate bill for these positions that will say how much the positions will be paid and so on and so forth. This is just creating the entity. That's all this bill is doing, is creating an entity. Also, this bill isn't mandating anybody participate. We made sure that we took that out. We took shall, so it's totally voluntary. So if the circuit attorney's office doesn't want to participate, fine. If the sheriff doesn't want to participate, fine. If the public defender's office don't want to participate, fine. If the judge don't want to participate, fine. It's okay. So,
well, why would you put these people in here without them agreeing to this? Because the
Well,
people I
okay.
spoke to were not really supportive of this, which was very different than what I heard the other day.
So we are having different conversations with the same two people. I've had a conversation for over 2 hours with Kim Gardner, the circuit attorney. Matter of fact, we are at this point so close because I was not able to get a sit down with her for several weeks in trying to talk about this bill to see what issues that she may have. Now, we had a very productive meeting. A lot of compromise came out of this, but it's my understanding she's still resistant to it for whatever, and that's okay, because it's not mandatory. And then the sheriff, I find it kind of hypocritical that the sheriff would have Deputy Timothy Hale come here just last week and say, oh, I just talked to the sheriff and he's really on board, and see, it's 2:15, we had a conversation and he's fine with it. And then we turn around today and we have the public information officer come in here and say what he said. I just find that hypocritical.
So you and I remember differently. I heard the deputy say that he called the sheriff at 2:15. I did not hear him say, I heard him say he was supportive of it, but not the sheriff, which is why I told you last time we had this hearing, I wanted to hear from the people that you were speaking for. I don't like other people speaking for people. I want Ms. Gardner to come here because I want her to be on the record. When you have a record, then you don't have to. I know the sheriff was here this morning. I know Mary Fox was here this morning. Other people were not. And they told me what their conversation was going to be and what their testimony. And Ms. Gardner, I spoke to the circuit attorney. I spoke to Friday evening while I was driving around with Donald Williams, who can tell you the same thing. I can bring him here because we were riding my ward because I had a BPS. We had some issues that we had to address. And so he heard part of the conversation, and she was aware that he was there. So I don't know what conversation you're having with the circuit attorney, but she is not happy about the paid position, and she is unsure about a lot of the very things that I as an attorney am unsure about. That being that we have this bill heavily influenced for the judges, and the elected officials have a lot less influence. I told you already I had problems with that we put 2 members of the ENA on the committee and not the other one, and I have a problem with us authorizing a paid position, and then you're telling me that we do not need a fiscal note, and I would disagree with that. We do need a fiscal note.
This bill, I'm not going to argue the point, but it doesn't need a fiscal note.
It absolutely does, and I think the reason why that it was not a fiscal note attached to it is because so that we would not look and know that there was going to be paid positions. And when you try to separate them out like that, is a way to try to finesse around.
That is absolutely absurd. It's in the bill that it's going to be positions. Staff positions. They're not voluntary. That's not being a voluntary executive director position.
So the alderwoman from the 27th was confused at the point being because she said she see where it's being appointed. If we had a fiscal note showing what was going to be paid to the people and what the positions were going to be, then that would be much more clear. One of the things that you are always harping on is about you want clearness. So for this bill to be clear, it should have had a fiscal note saying what positions and what the salary is going to be. What is the salary? Do you know what salaries that will be created with these positions?
No.
What positions?
The council will talk about that as they put together an intergovernmental agreement. They would talk about and have discussions about what level of staff that they want and what the salary range would be. And then, in order for that to get funded, we'd have to have another board bill authorizing the funding for that.
Okay, so do you have any kind of legal opinion from anybody saying that this board bill does not need to have a fiscal note to it?
I do not.
Okay. Again, so I had some other questions. So I know you changed that one portion, which I don't believe satisfied the alderman from the 24th, since he voted against even putting it
I don't understand that either.
Did you work with him?
I don't understand. I mean, this is plain, simple language that we talked about. It's in the same framework of what we talked about.
Did you work with him?
I did not.
Then perhaps you did not understand what his concern was.
Okay, well, maybe he can explain it to me.
Okay. He just went away. But my question is this: why is this bill so heavily impacted with judges on here? The circuit attorney has a vote, and then she has a person she can appoint. She's an elected official. The sheriff is an elected official. The judges are appointed by the governor, who can be a Republican, because many of our judges now were appointed by, because we've had governors that have been Republican. Many of our judges, who I know personally, you heard Judge Mullins come here, appointed by Republicans. Why is there such a heavy influence of judges more than elected officials? That makes no sense to me. I, as an elected official, don't want to be under an appointed person. I got more power with the people and represent the people more than somebody who's appointed by somebody. Say your name, please.
I'm Debbie Allen. There is one judge that sits, a state circuit judge that sits on this Criminal Justice Court in Council.
there's an administrative judge that sits on this council.
That is
There's-
appointed by the mayor. That is
Right,
a
but the
city. has a
administrative judge sits on this, and that's appointment. That's what I'm saying. This whole board is about appointment. If you want elected officials to feel comfortable, and I'm telling you what I heard from them, you do not put the appointed people so that they outweigh the elected officials. If you want them to have a equal conversation, then you don't put them over me, okay? It's like putting all committee people with the alder people and then saying the committee people run stuff. So my conversation with these elected officials was they have more power, and they do. When you look at how it's stacked up, and again, lawyer here, lawyer there, not spoke to each other, came to the same conclusion. So, and then the judge gets to appoint 2 people who are part of the community.
No, that is not correct.
Okay, where here? Let me see here, because I went.
Executive director makes that appointment.
The 2 people.
And
that-
by function, the judge,
Excuse me, what does the judge appoint? The presiding judge of the 22nd Judicial Circuit shall appoint 1 judge of the 22nd Judicial Service to serve as a member, right?
that's it.
Okay. The appointed judge shall, at the recommendation of the executive director, appoint 2 voting members who represent stakeholders. So he is appointing it. It is at the recommendation, but he still is doing the appointment.
By process. And
But he's
we-
still doing the appointment. You didn't say, you could have just had the executive director pick those people.
And that is the intent of that language.
Then why
It
is that in there that the judge appoints?
It is by process because the judge is at this current, is the chair of the council. Whoever is the chair by process goes through, it's just by process that they appoint that to say, will you? But the recommendation, the appointment really comes from the executive director. And we can clarify that language, that it is the executive director who recommends the appointment of the 2 community stakeholders, and that through the intergovernmental agreement, it outlines the criteria for which you will consider who should be that. For example, and it should align with the CJCC priorities. So, for example, right now, you have 1 community stakeholder who represents the public health community, Serena Mohammed. We have not appointed an additional one because the group has just started and they're still considering who should that be.
So, again,
And the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council should represent your criminal justice agency. You have 12 criminal justice agencies, and each one of those should have a seat at the table. I can't change the fact that you have a municipal administrative judge, you have a state court judge, you have a state circuit attorney, you have a city prosecutor. Each of those members should have a seat at the table because remember, this is a criminal justice coordinating council, and its focus is to coordinate your criminal justice reform response in this community. These people represent their budgets, their policies, and their practices, and they, by right, should have a seat at that table as to how that's going to look. And those who are impacted, like the community, they too should have a voice, but at the end of the day, it is these agency heads who happen to be elected, who happen to be appointed, who are legally obligated to their own agencies. Therefore, they must have a table at this table. To somehow suggest that someone like, with all due respect, the comptroller, to what purview does the comptroller have over the function of the state court, over probation, over your U.S. Marshal? You need to have a coordinated council that is representative of the work that is being done.
Stop right now, thank you, because you cannot take over my meeting. That will be a way for you to get a very adamant no vote. Answer my questions. So let me answer yours about why the comptroller. What I am talking about, ex officio non-voting members, the mayor, the president of Board of Aldermen. The comptroller could have also been a person added to it. You're trying to get votes, not subtract votes, okay? So what you're doing will not get my vote. I'm also chairing it, so that's not good to interrupt the chair. It will not make your point any better. You got it? Okay, thank you very much. So, to me, the reason why the comptroller should be on here as an ex officio non-voting member is the same reason that the mayor, the city councilor, the president of the Board of Aldermen, the comptroller, the mayor, and the president of the Board of Aldermen are part of a three-group people, and they are the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, and she controls the money. So I also called the comptroller to ask her about, because she works with the budget. Okay, we're getting ready to create a new position here. Do you know anything about it? No. I called personnel and talked to Richard, because I talk to people, because I believe a good agreement involves putting all the people who should be involved in the situation, making sure that they're having a discussion. He knew nothing about it. So all these people, when I listened to you last time, you were like, we're this big fuzzy thing and we're just putting this together, when it's not. So I don't like trying to force people who are elected to come to some kind of job creation, because that's what I see this is right now. So I also called, we have something called, what's the organization? We have a mediation group, which we just formed a couple of years ago. Carol Howard was the chair, and we formed that. I talked to them about could they work with what was going on and sent them, yes, we can do that. So my concern, and what I heard from all the people who you say shouldn't be at the table, was creating a position that was paid. My concern is that we did not have a fiscal note and that it's being discounted. I'm not going to take a vote again. This is not my committee. I am not, so we need not waste time. I'm now going to have time to write it up because I think this was pushed through. I'm not going to take a vote at this time, but we're going to write up all the things. I'm going to request all the people who had questions write up what their concerns are. And I'm also opposed to proposing that people have come to the table when they have not. I don't believe these people were lying to me, so much so that the sheriff shows up here, Mary Fox shows up here, and only the reason that the circuit attorney didn't show up is because it was such short notice. I am not trying to force elected officials into an agreement. If you want an agreement with elected officials, the best way you could have gotten me on board was to show where they had signed off on it or they showed up to testify for your bill. They did not. And I asked for those people to be here, and we pushed a Monday meeting. Time is not of the essence for me, and I am not going to entertain a motion to pass this bill out, except for if I do, it's going to be with a do not pass recommendation.
Alderwoman, with all due respect.
Yes, sir.
I wish you would please understand
I do.
that nobody is being forced to do anything. The elected officials do not have to participate. Not one person has to participate. We're only creating a vehicle for people to come together and share resources, to share information, to fix our criminal justice system. That is what this is about.
I do understand. I also understand that that the city, the Board of V&A proposed to have $600 and something thousand for demolition, more money.
Nothing to do with this board.
At first, please do not, I'll let you finish. And I understand the Ways and Means in trying to make a compromise took $300,000 out. So I'm not going to create any board. If whatever money we had to create and pay a position, I would prefer that go into demolition money. The sheriff would prefer that go to something else. The circuit attorney. So what I am telling you, if you really are talking about something you want to do, is take these positions out, paid positions, make that separate, and also sit down with these people and get honest assessments, because I was not pushing. I just called them to say, well, what's your position on this? And got an earful. You cannot, I don't believe in forming organizations in which you are trying to force people to come to the table. You have not done enough of your homework to me, okay? And I am not going to entertain a motion, and we might as well not spend any more time, because this, again, not my committee. And so if the alderman from the 4th wants to entertain a motion, let him come do it, because at this point I'm not. If anybody has any more questions, anybody have any more questions?
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Did anyone else? Okay. So, thank you again. And one of the things that you stated was that you don't have a say in the numbers of kind of the agencies, that there's a municipal court judge, a circuit court judge, a prosecutor, a municipal prosecutor, on and on down the line. But the way that I understand it, from what you and Alderman Boyd have put forward, is that this is essentially, in essence, a criminal justice reform bill.
It is a bill, as I understand it, to create the pathway for those agencies to come together to create an agreement for which these kinds of questions would be contemplated. It is through that process of creating that agreement, that intergovernmental agreement for which everyone signs off on, that's where you get into the details about roles, responsibilities, how voting's going to happen, who's going to sit, who's going to be representative of that. It is through that process. But to get to that process, you have to create that forum. When we talk about criminal justice reform, it's very important for like I told you last week, those criminal justice coordinating councils that are successful across this country, the difference between those that are successful and those that are not is when you have two very important characteristics. One, paid staff. You need a dedicated staff person who is skilled to know how to drive that coordination to the responses along those priorities that the council identifies. Currently, your council has identified 3 priorities, and they are working along those lines, and they've been working along that since November of last year. That work didn't happen because the group itself they needed someone to bring them together, that change maker, right? And continue that. That has to continue because these agencies, they don't have the time or the resources or the knowledge to do that. That's why you have a paid staff. When you have a group that doesn't have that kind of infrastructure, it falls apart, and you're back to where you were. The other characteristic, which is really important, is that you create a forum that has that legal, the backing to it, right? So that, for example, when you share information along criminal justice agencies, it's very important that they come together, they create a governance agreement, that's a legal document. Someone needs to own that. Who's the owner of this work? It's not one agency that owns criminal justice reform. It is a collective ownership. So who owns that collectively? And that's the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. So when you look at councils across the U.S. that don't have that ordinance or that state statute that creates that legal forum, they themselves then cannot share information, and they don't, until they go nowhere.
So, excuse me, you mentioned a change maker.
Yeah, and that's your executive director.
And what I'm seeing here is that this is heavily weighted, and my concern is that this is heavily weighted towards the same voices that have been at the table.
They haven't been at the table. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Prior to me coming here in November, they didn't come together in a collective way. Judge Mullen spoke about that. They tried to start a criminal justice coordinating council. It fell apart because they did not have a full-time staff person who was skilled to know how to, to drive the conversations and the collaboration and making sure that what gets coordinated in advance is evidence-based, data-driven, return on investment. That's why it fell apart.
Understandable. So I know, and back again to you don't have a say in the numbers of the agencies, and I understand that, and I'm not going to hassle you on that.
It is what it is. Yeah.
But you do have a say in how many community-based stakeholders are a part of this.
Correct. And so so if you think about it already, it's because of the number of your criminal justice agencies, like I said, 12, right? They already got a table. You want to be careful about making this council too big, because then it gets, and also remember that at the end of the day, the obligation those legal obligations and those budget obligations that those criminal justice agencies have, you can't force, right? So you got to make sure that their voice is what's prominent on the council, because they're the ones that have to agree to it at the end of the day. So you think about it in these two ways. Your stakeholders are those who are directly impacted, and you're impacted as your criminal justice agencies, and you think about it as contributors. So on the council itself, that the group felt, and you see this across the country, is it's usually between 2, 3, maybe 4, kind of depending on the size of your metropolitan area, but you don't want it too much, because then it can become overwhelming and burdensome of those conversations. This is why at the committee level so the composition of those committees, that's why at the committee level you have a certainly more diverse group, right? Because it's at the committee level that this work is really being done, right? At a council level is where they're setting the priorities, and they're saying to the committees, can you work along this line? So, for example, on the Public Health Committee, it was, we are charging you with our priority of coordinate planning and communication along the whole system of how we're going to respond to how we develop responses and practices and policies for those individuals that are interacting with the public health community or public health system, as well as the criminal justice system. Come up with your recommendations, send it up. So at the committee level is where you see an equal balance of, like I said, those impacted agencies, as well as your community contributors. And you see that for each of those committees. And that is actually should be a part of the intergovernmental agreement, right? To say, hey, at a committee level, let us make sure that you have equal voice. We have already structured it that way, so it won't be, any kind of change that has to happen when that agreement comes into play.
So I guess one of my big concerns here, and I know that you had spoken last week, you came here recently from Denver, I believe?
Correct.
So one of the things that, and I'm not sure your familiarity with the city as a whole here, but one of the things that we often talk about in the board and as a city is that this is essentially at times 2 different cities or 3 different cities, the north side, the south side, the central corridor.
Matters, that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. And so my concern would be that even with 2 community stakeholders, that you could miss an entire swath of the community.
So I have to tell you that the council itself, even at a committee level, they think about that. They do, and that is why when you look at the membership, right, that was very much thought about. We thought about the composition of those committees along these areas, along gender, race, economic, and geography. And in fact, that's stated within those missions and goal statements, not only at the committee level, but at the council level. So this is, like I said, this is why that agreement is so important, right, is to memorialize that. But we're not there yet. That's what this bill gets us to. The bill gets us to the opportunity to create that agreement. And so this board bill, how do I say this, is, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but I feel like you're trying to legislate in the board bill when really that's at the agreement level. We're just trying to get to the agreement.
Well, I think what we're trying to do is to build the sandbox that agreement will be made inside of. Is to set the parameters on
Right.
on where things are going in the direction that things are supposed to go, rather than kind of micromanaging it. But
Right.
I do see what you're saying.
And so when we started contemplating this board bill, which started about November, December, and we've been having conversations each month with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which represents they have representatives from the sheriff's office, the public defender's office, the circuit attorney's office, the judges, everyone that's mentioned in there. And how we've been framing it to them is that this board bill gets us to the agreement. We have not had, we've told everyone, we will have those very granular level conversations about the agreements. That's when we'll bring the stakeholders together. That's when we'll bring in personnel or whomever. But until we can be able to get there, we haven't had that conversation. So that's why when you contact the personnel department or whomever to say, they said, well, we haven't heard about it. That's because we haven't gotten there yet. We're just trying to create this forum that, create that ordinance that I talk about, just so we can get to the agreement. Then you can have those conversations. And I hope that they're earnest, and I hope they're, because you very much want that agreement to be reflective of what everyone can agree to. We haven't done it yet. It's not that we haven't thought about it. We got to get there. And my understanding is that's what this board bill does. It gets us to that conversation. And outside this board bill, we can't get there.
So then I guess the last thing that I'll say, my lingering concern here and my real hesitation still comes from, and like I said last week, it may just be the attorney in me, there's still not a definition for a community stakeholder. And I know that the amendment, I guess, attempted to clean up that language some, but I think it's still very vague what a community stakeholder would be.
I see. So do I hear you right? Because you and I talked about this, is that in that agreement, we talk about what should be the criteria for that. So my understanding is that's where we would talk about that. But what I'm hearing you say is you even want even further definition. I can tell you in other communities, right, when I think about all the other CJCCs out there, is that in our world, we know what that means. In the criminal justice community, we know what that means. But I hear you saying, but don't assume everybody else does. Okay, so.
Or that it won't be abused.
Exactly. Well, and that's why you and I were in alignment with, this is really meant to reflect that stakeholder group. And in fact, it really should be the stakeholder group. So what we have in Denver and what I know is in Washington, D.C., and like in Pennsylvania, every single county has a criminal justice coordinating council. So this is how I know, what's out there. In there, usually, and I would recommend that here too, is that the stakeholder group is the one that decides who that's going to be.
Well, but who's going to be that first stakeholder group then? That makes it a major decision then.
Well, so it
and
first
exactly
starts.
the kind of thing that I think that we should be weighing in on.
So first and foremost, the CJCC needs to have the ability to set its priorities, right? So their priorities right now, public health, alternatives to incarceration, and information sharing governance. Those stakeholders should should grow from those two priorities. Public health and alternatives to incarceration, right? So the executive director would go out to those communities to say, okay, we need you, community of public health. We need you to tell us who should be that representative. And that's actually what happened here. I reached out to several people, and they're like, Serena Muhammad. And so that group led me to Serena. Then I went to Serena, and I asked her, would she be willing? I then made that recommendation to Judge Mullen, who then agreed and said, now let me appoint by process that this person will sit that. That's how that should happen, and that's how that happens in other communities across the country.
I guess my concern is, even from what you're saying right there, and I appreciate exactly what you're saying, and I'm not trying to be difficult for the sake of being difficult.
No.
My concern is that even that process that you just laid out, I find skewed.
Why is that, may I ask?
So, absolutely. So, when we start with the same voices that have historically been at the table having these conversations, and I know you're saying that they haven't literally been at the table, but there is a network that has existed for a long time. As a practicing attorney, I can tell you, I know for a fact that, judges sit down with prosecutors and public defenders, and we have these conversations, whether it's official or whether it's at, a law school reunion. We sit around and talk about, the big picture stuff. Mm-hmm. And when you start with the people who have historically had the most prominent voices, you will necessarily leave out the people who have not historically had a prominent voice. If you ask me and Alderman Tyus and Alderman Middlebrook, who would you like to do this? We're going to start with someone that we know and like, and say, oh, okay, this person would be great to do this. But we're coming from our own starting point anyway, rather than where the community may truly be.
And so what I hear you saying is that, because I thought we agreed to that in the agreement, when we talk about the criteria, where that could be expressed, right, is that it needs to, a true effort needs to be made to make sure that those traditional and non-traditional voices are contacted to then come together with one person who represents them. And mind you, that person is then, is responsible for being the conduit between the CJCC and that community. So, for example, Serena, it isn't a matter of her just showing up every month. She is responsible for going to her stakeholders to say, this is what's being contemplated, can I get your voices, can I get your, and so when she comes and whenever there's a vote, she should be representing the voice of that community. That is her responsibility, and that would need to be represented in the agreement. But what I hear you saying is that what you would like to have in the bill is not necessarily all those fine points, but you want, could we add in there to say that that stakeholder truly, the intent is to make sure that those traditional and non-traditional voices have a say in who is going to be their representative.
Absolutely.
And that representative is responsible for making sure that their voices are heard at the CJCC.
Absolutely.
And that's and that should be the expectation. So if we add that piece is important in this bill.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of codifying all this. If you don't put it in writing, people don't follow through with the intent of things.
Exactly.
And as we discussed, my biggest concern is that we're going to pass this piece of legislation and we're going to be thrilled and think that we're making a step in the right direction, and 5 years later we're going to look and say, wow, we created another hammer for the criminal justice system to come down on the community.
Right. So could we add in there, do you like that language about traditional, and this is just off the top of my head, so I'm fine with you making, but to say that the intent is to make sure that the stakeholder represents those traditional and non-traditional stakeholders, like the stakeholders get to choose that person, first and foremost.
Let's get together, because we're not going to vote on this, okay? And write some language up that you can agree to. Sure. Okay. Would you like to?
Why don't, after the meeting here, we'll trade information and we can try and work on an amendment that.
And I can look for some language, maybe through my counterparts in D.C., and maybe to kind of, maybe as a starting point. But
absolutely.
They do contemplate that, and
Great. And and thank you so much. I know I've been kind of grilling you for a while here,
no worries.
I'll turn it back over.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I make a suggestion, please? Because it seems like we're like redoing this bill here at the table, and I don't think this is the appropriate place.
That's just what I just told him.
Yeah, could we, whoever all these groups are, who all these people that the chair and other members are saying, could you all look at coming together to kind of dissect this to make sure it's on point and it reflect was being asked, because I'm in agreement. A lot of times people say these are the stakeholders, and I tell people all the time, they do it a lot. You know, they say, well, they speak for your community. No, they don't. They don't even know my community. And so I'm insulted when people tell me that, because I know who my community is and who's actually out there doing the work. So the name doesn't make any difference to me. It's the work that you do.
Correct.
And so if you all could just come together, Alderman Boyd, get with the circuit attorney, the sheriff, and whoever else needs to be involved. And then it's not a one-sided thing. Everybody's looking at this bill. So when we come back to the table, we'll have answers.
And Alderwoman, may I respond to that? Actually, that has happened.
You actually have to address the chair, not the alderwoman.
Oh, I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
I thought she was asking me that. Alderwoman, that has happened. We have been contemplating this bill with the CJCC on a monthly basis since January. We have met personally, one-on-one, with the circuit attorney, with the sheriff's department. Multiple meetings have occurred with both of those entities. We meet every month, not only at a CJCC level, but at a committee level. And this board bill has been spoken about and has been discussed at not only at the council, but at every committee meeting, to get that feedback, to get that buy-in. So I do want to make sure that that's understood, that that has happened.
Have any further questions?
No,
When you say this board bill has been spoken about, did you give them a copy of this bill?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you ask for their insight or their response?
Yes, ma'am.
And did anybody respond at all?
Yes, the sheriff's office asked for a meeting. There have been 3 separate meetings with the sheriff, and the board bill reflects changes that he asked for specifically, and 2 meetings have occurred with the circuit attorney's office. And the board bill reflects her ask of changes.
Okay. And is any of that in writing? Any correspondence or writing back and forth, that you have any of that?
Do we have any?
I personally asked the circuit attorney's office if she could provide me in writing some of the
And did she?
concerns, and she did not.
Okay.
Just as she didn't meet for 3 weeks. But we sat down, and I think when you sit down with somebody and you try to work out a compromise, that's just as good. You know, we're sitting down, we're one-on-one. You can feel how a person feels, if there's sincerity, and we made changes. Just using the circuit attorney as an example, I think we made some very good changes based on some of the concerns that she had. It went from it gave the circuit attorney basically 2 votes on the council, because we added one. We gave the sheriff 2 votes on the council, and
Which the sheriff actually did ask for.
I'm just not sure we can add and recommend this for a long time. I mean, there has been a lot of good work on this. I sat in on a meeting. The sheriff was there, and people were excited about sharing of information, about collaborating and working together. We're not going to please everybody that wants to be part of this. Matter of fact, the next public defender may say it's a waste of that person's time. The next elected official may say, I'm not interested in this. But the beauty of it is they don't have to. And they can put whatever policy they want to, as far as how the executive director position is, but it's subject to change. Everything is subject to change. We are not going to be able to make a perfect bill out of this. But what we are doing is we're bringing all the stakeholders to the table. We got to
Okay, Alderman, I'm sorry. I had other questions. You're going way past, and I need to ask my other questions because I have someplace else to be, and we're not going to vote today, okay? I need to ask the young lady standing here, are you going to be the person that gets this position? Is that the understanding? Is this job being
No.
created for you?
No.
You do not intend to take the position at all? Okay.
No, that is no. I'm sorry. It is not.
No, you don't have to be sorry. It was a
This
direct question.
position needs to be a full-time, forever Debbie Allen.
Okay.
And that's not me.
And also, in your experience, what does the staff look like whenever they formed? Have there been paid positions in other
Absolutely.
And what does the staff look like? How many, is there an executive director and how many other staff members?
It is advised, and like I told you about the different characteristics. You want to have an executive director, and then ultimately, I would start with an executive director, and then you want to go to what's called a planner. And that planner helps to do the analysis and more of the executive director is really working with those elected
You
and
don't have to
appointed.
go into it, I'm sorry.
Executive director and then-
Executive director and a planner.
Yes, but start with the
You
first.
wouldn't
and
have
the second.
clerical?
No.
Okay, no clerical. So, and then I have a question here on page 4 of 8. It talks about your powers and duties, and it says to sue and be sued in corporate name. So if you would be sued, who would be responsible for paying, and then would the corporation be responsible for insurance? Because we have gotten sued, and the city have to pay. When police officers get off criminally but are sued, the city has to pay that out of our general revenue. Who would be paying that?
They would need to have insurance.
Okay.
Okay.
And where would that money come from to pay the insurance?
Well, we'd have to look into where that would need to come from, but that would be something that would be laid out in the agreement. And then if it needed to be put into the budget, the next year, whenever they finally are in a situation where they can have that position filled, then they would have to put that in a budget, and they would have to actually have, that would be part of the fiscal notes and everything that they have attached to
Would
those
you
bills.
say your name again for the camera?
Rebecca Wright, sorry.
I didn't know who she was.
I beg your pardon? Did you have a question,
No,
Alderman?
I didn't know who she was.
That's what I was going to say. Say your name
I
again.
apologize for not introducing myself. My name is Rebecca Wright. I'm with the City Councilor's office.
Okay. And so so in this agreement, would this come before the Board of Aldermen again, this agreement, once they put it together?
No.
So whatever they say, we wouldn't have any further say about it. So if we don't have the say right now, then forever hold our peace?
The budget would be back before you,
Yes, but not the agreement.
not the agreement. The parties and stakeholders would be part of that agreement.
Okay. And I just want to point out, I want to agree with what Alderwoman from the 27th said about people speaking for our community all the time. When you start out with the person who appoints somebody to do that or they seek it, you start with inherent bias. At the end of the meeting last time, someone came from your group of people and said to me, I remember you bringing up the issue about trash trucks and trash and drivers and how that was inherently racist and nobody thought anything about it until I became the chair of public employees. The city of St. Louis was taking all our new trash trucks and all our experienced trash drivers and putting them in one part of the city. And I stopped that. But all the people, all the lawyers and everybody else, all the people we have, nobody saw that because they all live in a different part of town and it wasn't affecting them. And so they were not concerned. All the people over here, we know about it, okay, these 3 people, but it was not affecting them. So whether you know it or not, you have inherent traits. I do and everybody else. So when you pick the person or you seek the person, you're already still putting your inherent prejudice, racism, or thought into it. And so that's why I like for black elected officials, Asian, Pacific Asian, or whoever elected officials, be able to pick their own representative, Asians, Hispanics, because when white people pick them, they pick somebody who's comfortable to them, not people who actually necessarily represent what the community would say, okay? And if anybody else doesn't have any further questions, we're going to not take any further questions. I'm going to send a list to the aldermen this time because I had asked for people to come here, and I usually expect when I ask for you to come here that you try to produce those people. I don't see any of them, and there wasn't time to produce them in this period of time. Okay.
Madam Chair, all due respect, we can't make somebody come to a hearing.
Wait. I'm not saying make, but I want to, there was not enough time to get them even to come, but I was able to get 2 people to come just with a phone call. So to me, you didn't make the effort, Alderman.
Any other people would you like to show up?
I
Is
want
there
the
a
people
list
to
of
speak
people?
for the, I'm going to now be able to.
They all came here,
We
the majority
cannot-
of them, they each came up here
Alderman,
and spoke.
please stop talking over me. You can have a committee. This is not your committee. You're not going to run it, Alderman.
I don't
So,
want to. I just
okay.
want somebody
Yes,
else
you do.
to.
What I will give you a list of people, and I'm not saying you have to make, but you should make an effort. There was no effort. You had not asked the sheriff to come. You had not asked the
That
public
is
defender to come.
not true. The
Well,
sheriff
that-
knew about the hearing. Stop saying that.
Thank you, Alderman. Anyway, I will send the alderman a letter of what I would like to have, and I will also like to have a fiscal note, because I disagree.
going to get a fiscal
All
note
right,
because
well,
it
then,
does not
I'm not
require
going to
one.
entertain it, so it will have to be
That's being
another.
an obstructionist.
Thank you very much. At this point, we will not take any more testimony. This is a way how not to get your bills passed. Okay.
Y'all get a turn.
Thank you very much. We're going to go back to approval of the minutes. The clerk had to amend some of the minutes. And so now with the amendments to the minutes, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the June 27th meeting. And
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. If you would call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Gunther, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan,
Aye.
and Chairman Moore. That's 4 aye votes.
Okay, with your vote, you approve the minutes from June 27th. Is there anything else the committee wants to bring up? If not, we're going to adjourn this meeting. Anybody else have anything else? Okay. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a movement to, there's been a motion to adjourn the meeting, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting's adjourned.